overlay. Hello and welcome to A Life of Creation. My name is Chad and I am the host of this channel. Tonight I am excited because we get to have my good friend Charlie Pecoraro answer 10 questions about creation. Let's get into it. Well, do you want to do 10 questions now?
Yeah, sure.
I'm back with Charlie Pecoraro and we are going to do the 10 questions. So, question number 1. What does it mean to you to live a life of creation?
Well, um, I feel for me to be a successful creator, it's for me to take my unique perspective on the world and express it and share it. Because when we come into contact with people's expression, we feel less lonely in the world. You know, when you hear a song and the lyrics resonate with you, that feeling, that wow, like um, someone else feels that way, or you see a work of art or a film that just hits you, like that's coming straight out of somebody's creativity and their perspective, and that's such a beautiful human thing that we all share. So if I'm able to uh, with more and more skill um, and more truth of myself, I'm able to put that into the world through my creation, so that people can experience it and share it with me. That's successful life of creation for me.
Question 2. So I believe everyone is made to create, and I think that it's one of our purposes as human beings. There's, the glamorous side of creation, artists, musicians, creatives, but I think there's also a lot of value in the workman's approach to creation as well. What are areas you see the value in creation, but are often underrated or not even acknowledged as creation?
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, in my own life that aren't artistic
Either your life or just like I talk about accountants a lot and just I
or
don't un
accountants,
yeah, right.
which they were
Well,
taking it for granted their jobs are boring.
right, and that's us as creative creators looking at them going, "Oh man, I can't believe I who would do that?" It's so boring, but to them
There's an
they're
art to
wi
it.
they're wired to, and like I talk about people who can do like Excel spreadsheets.
Well, believe me, I ask my tax accountant to get creative quite often. So I got a lot of write-offs as an artist, and sometimes we got to figure out workarounds and stuff. I mean, yeah, even the bedside manner of a doctor, or um, how a police officer can act like a human being and interact with the spirit of the law and not the letter of the law. Um, even guys who do construction, how well they do it, their attention to detail, whether they care or not.
Right.
Um, these things are all expressions of ourselves, um, instead of just doing it mindlessly. I think anytime you put some effort into something, try to do it well from where you're coming from, that's an act of creation, regardless of the thing you're actually doing.
Right. Yeah, I would agree. Like there's people in every profession, even creative ones who, are putting effort into it and it usually shows and, it's kind of like, all right, you're not creating anything, but you're just creating problems, I guess. So I guess that's
I mean,
creating too.
that's why there's a big discussion in Hollywood right now about just sequels, and who are those ideas coming from? Typically non-creatives, business people who are looking at the numbers, and they're not making the decisions based on what they think would be a prescient story, an impactful, timely story, a beautiful source material they found in a news article or a novel. They're looking to just increase the earnings. And that's why they say, Hollywood used to be run by artists, business people, but with an artistic um, thrust and sense. storytelling sense.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess that's what can happen even in a creative industry when people don't uh, put the art first.
Right. But you could also argue that they are creating wealth.
Yeah, well, that's certainly true. That's certainly
But
true.
I mean, I work for a corporation too, so it's like it's artistic until it doesn't sell, and then it's like, all right, we're going to just make it sell, because we
Yeah,
need to.
it's no slam against making money. Like you got to, like,
Right.
money supports art. But you know,
Yeah. I feel like I'm pretty blessed with leadership that, kind of has towed the line pretty well between business and integrity. And I
mhm.
think I think that's the heart of it is the integrity of what you're actually doing. Because you could be making money, but you're doing it with integrity.
Right.
No one's gonna question that. Or you could be working, flipping burgers, but if you're doing it with integrity and putting you're there and you're present, that's a form of creation, and no one would think, you know, less of you for putting in that much effort because they showed up, and that's
Let's say,
huge.
look at this guy. He's making something out of an otherwise menial job. He's
Yeah,
putting some personality into it, some creativity into it.
yeah,
That's why you get some bartenders who are just making the drinks, and other bartenders people really like being around
right,
as they engage, they personalize it themselves. They're being
right.
creative with it.
Yeah, so I guess that would be kind of another example of, a heart of a creator is just putting your putting your heart into what you're doing, even if it is something menial.
Yeah.
Question three. Do you believe you need to be passionate about what you create?
Well, I guess, maybe passion is like the umbrella, and underneath that was what we talked about before, inspiration and motivation. So, I mean, if we're putting creativity within the framework of using your heart, using your person, using your makeup to um, to put your perspective into the world, then I would say yes. Otherwise, you're just performing tasks.
Right. Yeah, I had said that you don't have to have passion because, you know, I was coming from a corporate photographer who does have tasks, and I'm not necessarily passionate about it, but, I'm motivated by checking off the tasks and making sure we get stuff done and, ultimately making the sales so that we get paid and I have a job and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know if you necessarily have to have passion
Well, you have a
behind.
passion for your house, you have a passion for providing for your family. That
Yeah,
might fall under the motivation side of things.
right. And I think that's, yeah, passion may not need to feed motivation, I guess, but passion usually would feed inspiration.
Yeah, I think when people think of passion, they think of, inspiration more. Like
Yeah,
it's emotional, it's hard to contain. You're led by the nose with
right.
it. Um, whereas motivation like kicks you in the ass behind you and you know,
Yeah.
um, but it's
The
good that we're chewing up the semantics of this because it's hard to pin down, and everyone kind of experiences it differently. But I feel like the more questions is better than the more answers.
right. Exactly. And I think everyone will have different thoughts on it too.
Yeah,
Usually probably based on their day
sure.
or their week. I don't think your creation has to be good to grow from it. I'm certainly not great at everything I try to do. What are some things you create that you may not consider great, but something that you gain value from the act of creating? And do you have words of encouragement for those who get discouraged when their creations fall short of their expectations?
Yeah, I guess it's really what's the point of you doing the creating? Is it you enjoying the process, or is it you standing back and looking or listening or experiencing the finished product and saying, I'm accomplished? Of course, there's a satisfaction in gaining that skill set, mastering it over time. But if you don't enjoy the process, then you're never going to get through the periods of being sucky.
Right.
Um, and the first thing that came to mind was just doing the painting that I did during the pandemic. Like, I am not a good painter, but I was really enjoying what I was making.
Right.
Um, I don't paint anymore. I mean, pandemic, we all had a lot of time, but I loved doing it. And I painted this electrical box outside and I love walking by it. Um, so yeah, I mean, if you work towards something for many years and you don't find that you get the recognition that you were hoping for, then you really have to ask yourself, is the process enough for me?
Right.
If you're trying to do it professionally, it might not be because it might not be something you need to put in the professional bucket for yourself. You might need to do it as an avocation instead of a vocation,
Right.
as a hobby.
Yeah.
Um, but
I
if
mean
you don't
that
love the process, then you're just doing it for the glory or something, and you won't ever get there.
right. You probably would never be happy even if you got that glory because you don't like if you don't enjoy it to begin with. It's like who cares? If you become something, it's like it's going to be a chore every time.
My father's brother, Steve, the actor and the dancer, he would say, if you don't want to dance for the rats and the cats in the alley, then you don't belong up on the stage. If you can't do whatever you're doing for no audience, if you just do it if you can't do it for the pure joy of it, then you really don't deserve and probably will never get to a place where other people will be able to um, give you the credit that you might be seeking because it won't resonate with anybody if it's
Right.
not
It's not authentic.
emanating from you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, that's music for me at this point. It's like I enjoy it and it's fun and it fills me, like I said, it fills me up to then go and create out at work, you know.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so I mean, I guess an encouragement would be just keep pushing through if it's something you actually want, if you like the process, or just distinguish whether you like the process or not.
Yeah.
All right, not all creators would consider themselves creative. Do you believe you have to be creative to live a life of creation? I think we kind of hit on this a little bit too.
I mean, maybe a substitute for being creative is being artistic. Like there are people who are, you know, just by looking at them, you could tell that they're artsy people.
Right.
Um, and that's maybe what you're talking about here in this question is if you're not an artsy fartsy person, or if you don't feel like you're, Jacob Collier looking guy wearing like rainbow pants and being just a super full of life creative looking guy, can you still be a creative? Yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, your creativity just comes in different forms that are not as outwardly showing or may not be related to the arts at all.
Or that artsy person you see is not really arty at all either. They're just pretending.
Sure, sure.
I've met a few of those too. You're like, oh, yeah, you're a show.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I agree too. It's just I think I actually changed it in my notes. I'll put artistic now to live a life of creation because I think that is kind of the heart of the question is most people would think creative is equaling artistic. So it makes sense. And no, you don't have to be artistic.
Yeah.
I think it makes it a little easier.
Yeah,
Um,
because you fostered the you've created in yourself the space and the opportunity and the muscles to get into creative situations. And that's part of what that book we were talking about earlier, The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, hopes to accomplish in people is if they're feeling creatively stuck, um, she looks, she asks you to kind of woo the creative spirit within yourself so that, people who go a whole lifetime without feeling they're artistic and so they're not creative, they put up these walls so that if they're asked to do something creative, they haven't paved that road
Right.
to be open to it. But the more you exercise the spirit of creativity, I think the more adept you get at it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's kind of what I want people to understand. It's like you don't have to be necessarily artistic to be a creator. It's just allow yourself to try stuff and try new things and put yourself out there. Because like you answered in the question before, a couple before, you don't have to be good at it. If you
Yeah,
enjoy the process, just do it.
yeah. Being creative, it has no notion of quality of output or skill level.
Yeah. I mean, I was into punk and hardcore. It doesn't always take a lot of skill, but the heart's there, and it's like you feel, the emotion, and I think that's why it resonated with me.
Well, I'll tell you, as a bartender at a jazz club for 12 years, I was audience to plenty of jazz musicians who would just rip these solos either squelchingly high or just a million and a half notes, and there would be no heart to it at all. And I would always call it the Jazz Olympics because jazz isn't about like winning a gold medal. It's about the heart of what you're trying to say,
Right,
right? Emotional depth. But these guys didn't have that to contribute, maybe, and they just became monsters. I'm thinking of a bass player in particular, I don't want to name, but he's just like, he barely ever heard a bass player who could play so many notes.
right.
What is he saying? It seemed really just dry and plastic.
But it's funny you talk about bases because on Facebook today popped up the memory of you tagged me and a few other people about the isolated bass of the guy from the Who.
Oh, John
Uh,
Entwistle.
yeah, on was it Who's Next or I don't know, one of their big songs, and holy cow, like that dude,
Yeah.
incredible. And it was he didn't look like he was putting in emotion, but it was like that was art. That was amazing.
And then on the other side of, the opposite of like this jazz bassist I'm talking about, you have someone like the Sex Pistols or some other punk band who may not be technically proficient, but the passion of what they're trying to say resonates
Yeah.
hard, you know.
Well, Sid Vicious wasn't known for his bass playing skills, but everyone knows who Sid Vicious is because of the heart he had in it. But
They
yeah,
interpreted the zeitgeist of their time.
yeah,
They were able to synthesize what was going on in their time and place in such a potent way that they were, I have heard a lot of jazz interviews, someone like Roy Hargrove, trumpeter, he would say he's a conduit, he's like, you don't know where inspiration comes from, but if you could pass it through to people, that's your job.
yeah,
And someone like Sid and the rest of the Pistols, they found themselves to be successful conduits of the feeling of the time and place.
yeah, yeah. I think that's why a lot of the punk bands always resonated with me. It was like they spoke for a generation of kids who weren't getting the attention, but
Hmm.
everyone felt it, and it was like they were able to put it into a form, that everyone like, yeah, that's how I felt. I can scream with you. Perfect. It's like
Yeah.
this amazing camaraderie of brotherhood and sisterhood, and like and when I was going to a lot of shows, it was very like open-minded, and everyone's just happy to be there and supported each other, and like you had a lot of people who had negative experiences within that scene, but I always had positive ones. So I saw some negative, but there's a lot of the heart behind it was pretty cool.
Hmm.
And I still know a lot of those people and hope to have them on my channel at some point too.
Yeah, man.
Because I mean they have great stories as well.
Sure.
Is there an experience or a time in your life where you realized that you were a creator?
Um, well, I mean, I grew up playing instruments. Um, so I thought of myself as a musician as a kid. Um, but I remember when I was about to graduate college with a film degree and a performance minor, I remember thinking, wow, I'm gonna really give myself the opportunity to be a professional artist. And like I said earlier, like it's not like I came from a bunch of like office professionals, but for me, I remember thinking about it like this is a wild thing to pursue. It even seemed foreign to me at the time because everyone who was a professional artist in my family was retired um, growing up. But I guess when I moved to LA and began pursuing performance as an actor, it usually takes actors a couple years to not say that they're an aspiring actor. Usually that's what young artists say, they're aspiring, like they're not there yet. But then, you go to some workshops or you read some books or you listen to interviews and you realize like to say you're an actor is not to say that you're a great one yet, but you're doing the work. You're doing the actor's work, you know? So I think once I accepted that I was an actor, um, and more of my creative, flower started to blossom. And I guess I could say I identified more as a creative, somewhere like my mid to late 20s.
Yeah. Yeah. I always say I feel like my moment was probably when I first got paid for photos in high
Mm.
school. I got like $40. Basically it helped cover film. And then but I feel like it really hit when I think it was a week before I started college. I made the decision to switch my major from business administration to photo communications.
Wow.
I was like, all right,
There you
I'm
go.
I'm I'm going for it. I had support of my parents and they said, all right, well, give it a shot. Of course, I minored in business administration, but I
That's,
didn't fully go for it, but
that's prudent. I'd say you fully went for it and some.
yeah. So, yeah, I think maybe your early 20s is a pretty pivotal time of when you kind of start realizing who you want to be at least.
Hmm.
Question 7. Was there a family member or a friend encouraging you to pursue your passion for creation?
Yeah, I lucked out. I always say my parents, would have encouraged me if I wanted to pick my nose professionally. You know, they
They
just
would.
believed, they just believed in me so hard, and wanted to encourage me, and were not practical people. So for better or for worse, I got a lot of encouragement from them. There's only one thing my dad ever said that he didn't think I should really pursue, and that was singing. He goes, son, I love you. I think you're very talented at this, 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 and that. He says, I just don't know if you have a singing voice, which is so funny. I didn't take it hard or anything, but I was glad that he was at least honest. So that way I knew he actually believed in me and other stuff.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, my mom, even when I've said, hang up acting, screw it, I'm done with this crap. Um, she still says, oh, you're so talented. You really should give it another shot. Um, so yeah, I was lucky to grow up in a warm environment full of, and my also my extended family too, No real naysayers. So if I did, if I didn't have enough confidence to pursue, and you know what, even in spite of all that, there's still like the self-confidence hurdles to
Right.
overcome as a professional creative. Because we're in this major market, like one of the world's most major creative markets, and you get like a lot of the top from all over the place come here to compete in the big leagues.
Right.
And so, I'm a self-taught drummer and I'm competent. I can play and have good feel and good taste, and I can make music that sounds at least good to me and some other people. But I'm not, if I try to compare myself to some of these Berkeley grad, drummers or guys who studied since they were 5, or I grew up in gospel churches and playing their ass off, it's like there's a whole dialogue that goes on in my head that I don't even have a right to sit down at the kit
Yeah.
to compare yourself. So even in spite of having encouragement, um, you still have to encourage yourself too.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a personal battle. Where they may encourage you to go out there, but you still gotta, defend yourself and support yourself and do all that kind of stuff too. It's funny you say like, growing up playing in gospel churches. I play in a small bass on a small church, and I'm just like, what? What do you?
Well,
Can you write that down for me?
yeah, and also the evangelical or just non or like the white Protestant church worship tradition is a little less focused on like virtuosity. In the black churches, they like rip.
Yeah.
You don't see it too often in a white church because just culturally it feels like it's taken away from the focus or something. But in the black church, like that is the act of worship,
Right.
and
They're
people,
worshiping that way.
yeah, they get down on that.
Yeah.
And there's a culture of like off the wall musicianship, and
Oh yeah.
it's an amazing breeding grounds for like just absolute musical monsters.
Yes.
You know,
Yes, it is. Yeah, I mean they're all like professional, and I won't even say they're professional. It's like that's just natural that sometimes in those
well, not all
communities.
the guys make it. It's like it's competitive. In those environments. It's like if somebody can't hack it on an instrument, they'll get replaced by a dude who's putting in the time.
Not everyone gets paid to create something they are passionate about, but where do you see the value in people still pursuing their passions?
Yeah, well, so I've chosen to not put the weight of making money on my drum playing. Like, yeah, when I have gigs, I get paid, but I'm not really that concerned about like what I'm getting paid. If I get paid a modest amount and I get a couple of beers and a bowl of soup, like I'm happy as a clam. But it's nice that I don't have the weight of making money with that instrument so that I can just enjoy it in a pure way. So that's kind of the other side of the coin for the non-professional creative or for the pursuit that is a non-professional creative pursuit. You're the other side of it where you do make money with your creative pursuit. And as a result, like the struggle is there to maintain the inspiration sometimes.
Right.
If you were just shooting on the side and you're doing business admin at some place, like you would experience your creative skill of photography in a vastly different way, right? It would just be
Okay.
purely what you want to shoot when you want to shoot it.
Right.
So I
I
think
don't know
that's
if I don't know if I would be shooting photo because I think for me having that constant need to actually shoot has actually kind of helped that too. I don't know. I mean, like I said, it's not always filled with passion, but you know, it, sometimes pursuing those things outside of work can be really hard. I mean, I was shooting concerts, so for me, like I kind of gave that up so I could be home with my family because I was for so long, I was just like you. I'm like, you get me in, and you'll give me like $50,
yeah.
do it. but it's like became the point of that ain't worth it if I'm not seeing my family.
Well,
So
maybe if you like, weren't shooting professionally, maybe you'd make some time once a month, go to a gig and
right,
take snaps, just to keep it going as another creative outlet. Like you work with stones, like you collect things, all the things you do.
right. I think
Might make some time.
I probably would have switched my focus on photography. Maybe would have started shooting flowers in the backyard or something, because it's still shooting and I can be home or whatever.
Right.
Um, but I do think it is important for people to pursue passions, even if they're not getting paid, because
Yeah.
that is so
Uh,
fulfilling.
Yeah. It honestly, getting paid, I mean, you got to get paid for doing something. Hopefully you don't hate it,
Right.
but
Yeah.
it doesn't necessarily need to be like your main hobby, your main creative outlet. Um, but you just gotta love doing it, or else go find something else that tickles you.
Right. I mean, the argument could be too that say someone does hate their job and, it is drudgery, but they need it to pay bills and everything. If they have something that they are passionate about creating outside of work, that may just get them through, just
Right.
that is their escape from reality for that moment.
Yeah, the weekend warrior, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we talk a lot about weekend warriors and, our side little gig too. Just,
Hmm.
it's these little moments of creation can fill you up and bring you joy that can sustain you for a while. I mean, I know for me, if I get into, you know, uh, I'm inspired and motivated to work on a song, like I may spend every night for a week after my boys go down to set up mics and, record or go into MuseScore and try, scoring out some composition. I'm like up until, 12 or 1 at night and get up and go to work the next day. I'm like, it brings me back to my concert days of, staying out late, shooting, getting up. But it's like because you're pursuing a passion, it doesn't matter. You you don't necessarily feel tired because you're like excited and filled.
I
I
mean,
mean, it all
you wouldn't do it if you didn't really enjoy it. If it didn't give you something back in terms of energy and satisfaction.
right.
Think about something to tool on. How can I solve this thing? I mean, that's a great space, when you got a project and you're trying to work out solutions to something that are elegant or beautiful, whatever the medium is. It's worth it.
Yeah. Um, yeah, and I think, you know, you touched on it before where it's like, you have your seasons of inspiration and seasons of motivation, and sometimes seasons of neither, because you may have, put all your inspiration and motivation into a project, you finished it, and sometimes I think your body just needs to, rest and recover and,
Yeah.
take your mind off of what you just did. And, those are the nights I usually will me and the my wife will get into a TV show and we'll watch TV and or maybe pick up a book and read more. And it's like I think the non-creation moments are just as important, but I think ultimately it is important to pursue these little passions because like we've been talking about, it makes life interesting.
Yeah, man. It adds the seasoning to life.
Yeah,
Um, like, yeah, I'm not passionate. I'm not inspired to date right now, but I'm motivated to not be lonely. So, uh, I have to use my motivation right now in this season instead of the
right.
inspiration.
Hey,
Yeah.
the motivation will can breed inspiration too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, don't use the word breed because
Oh, I use that term.
All in the right order. Yeah.
Question 9. How can you encourage others to live a life of creation and to see the value in the act of creation?
Yeah, I mean, even between two guys like us who already see the value, like we encourage each other because we see what stokes each other and we're encouraging to one another as friends. Um, you know, maybe if you have a friend that you feel is stuck, um, personally, relationally, job wise, if you're a trusted friend of theirs and you want to encourage them to make efforts to reignite their passions, I mean, I've recommended this book to probably three people this year, The Artist's Way. And, for anybody who's done it, it's like there's kind of an underground community of people who are usually professional artists, but it's such a common thing to run dry
Right.
in your creative pursuits that this book has such a lovely way of taking you by the hand and asking you to take yourself on creative dates. Go to a museum by yourself, try a new ethnic food you've never had, different, 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 so that you can saturate yourself with new stimuli that may knock something over and trigger a passion that you never, because right now, that person who may be stuck, maybe they're all too familiar with all the things in their life. Maybe they've been doing things the same way for a long time. Of course, they're stuck. Of course, they're bored. Um, I always say you got to throw a good wrench in the works. You got to disrupt the pattern.
Right.
Um, so that's what I would encourage people who you feel like could use some creative inspiration is to encourage them to do some things differently. Um, I think that promotes growth. I think it introduces new possibilities along with the new ideas, new sounds, new sights. Um, Even that's why I say going on a trip. There's a G.K. Chesterton quote about traveling is not so much to experience a new foreign locale, but to come back home after that trip and see your home with new eyes.
Right.
So if you can see your everyday life with new eyes because you've had new stimuli introduced into your life, it's not like everything needs to change. You just gotta knock something over a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that makes sense. I would say I would agree with that too. You know, being you know, a father of two, a husband, and sole provider, I can only disrupt it so much, but I think to your point, it doesn't even have to be anything crazy. It could be like me learning about pipes,
Yeah, literally.
totally something different, and I didn't have to go anywhere. All I bought was some, tobacco, and it's like you didn't have to do much.
Yeah, she's not advocating really for any major disruptions, like go move to a new city or go drop a treasured friendship or quit your job or whatever. She's just saying try to experience some newness to add new colors to your experience.
Yeah. And I think, something to that is, I feel like I may be notorious with this with you and other people is like I get excited about something and I tell everyone about it, and then a lot of people then get excited about it and they go off and do it. And then I go, all right, I'm done. But I launched like five people out to go, you know, get their pipes out again or, buy a fountain pen or something.
Well, usually when someone's passionate about something, that energy gets transferred to whomever they're expressing it to. Um, and I've definitely experienced that with you. Even though we have some overlapping interests, I've never dived into gemstones or fountain pens prior. But it's interesting. And at the very least, even if I'm not natively interested in that subject, I enjoy hearing what you've learned
Right.
uh, because that's newness to me.
Right. Yeah. And I think, as we create relationships, it's like, you know, Jessica, my wife, doesn't, isn't excited about baseball cards, but she'll listen to me talk about them, you know?
It's a good spouse.
Yeah. So it's like, I think we start picking up on the interest of, our friends and close relations. And it's like you get excited for them because they're excited about something.
Sure.
And I think that can, you know, be related to, how to encourage others is like if they see you feel the value in what you're creating, they can then go, okay, well, that, back to like my music may not be great, but he's excited about it. So maybe I can actually play better guitar than him. Maybe I can do it, or whatever. It might inspire them to then go create.
Sure.
Um, so I think just even the act of living our lives of creation can be an encouragement to others to then live a life of creation.
One thing we haven't really talked about explicitly in terms of life of creation is the community and working together on a creation,
Yeah.
which is something that is, that you're really good at with your music, is you bring in all sorts of people to work on your projects, um, and so not only do you get a really nice end product, but what you're able to share with people that were a part of it is so lovely.
Yeah.
The community aspect, the joy of co-creating.
Right. Co-creating is amazing.
Yeah.
And I touch on that in the collecting thing video I did too, because it's like, you know, if you are interested in this niche little thing, chances are there's other people who are interested in that niche, and then you can get plugged into this community. And it's like not only not only are you creating a collection of something, but you are also now creating a community, relationships, and you're finding value within a subculture or what have you. It's like there's so many aspects to um pursuing your interests and living you know uh, as a creator, and it's amazing. And like this is why I'm having a conversation with you right now. It's we're creators who can have this conversation about creating because we aren't doing the same thing, but we're living a similar life. We share the journey.
Yeah, I mean, that's I mean, even though we know each other for most of our lives, that's one of the nice things about the internet is like people can, no matter what you're interested in, you know, I like laserdiscs and typewriters, and you better believe like there's a pretty robust community around each of those things, and even, more ephemeral than that. But like there's creating by yourself, and maybe that existed more, or enjoying and creating on a subject by yourself. But now that we have so much connectivity, it's like you can really share that creative experience, that creative life that you're fostering and feeding and developing with people around the world. Like with my Pablo Records Instagram account, I have so many people from Asia, so many people from Europe, South America, that are interested in this record label, and it's a niche label,
Yeah,
but it's so cool that we can connect and I can create my posts and share it with literally, people around the world. It blows my mind.
yeah. Yeah, I have a similar story with the gemstone. When I was researching it, found a guy on Instagram who is just a aspiring lapidary in Singapore,
Hmm.
and he would answer my questions and everything, and then I ended up buying a stone from him that he cut for me, and it
Wow.
was like he sent me a picture and it's like, hey, this is where the miner found it. It was like just a hole, like muddy hole in
Wow.
Cambodia.
Huh.
It's like that's amazing. And it's like, our conversations were either I had just woken up and he's going to bed, or
Yeah.
I'm going to bed and he's just waking up because of the time difference. And it's like we've had these great conversations about gemstones
Yeah.
all the way across the world.
It's truly amazing.
Yeah, it's crazy.
The shared and common humanity is I think what's humbling and so delightful about it is, it's amazing people so far away that we have so much in common.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Yeah. And even going back to the co-creating thing, it's like I had, you know, a guy working on vocals in New York at one point, and then some people working on it in Texas, Idaho. It's like
It's great.
great. And some people I hadn't even met in person. And it's like we just have connection somehow, and then they got me connected with them, and they're like, "Yeah, let's do it." And they're like, amazing.
And that space between creators, those tendons, that's a big part of the joy, you
Yeah.
know.
Last question. Question 10. How would you like to see yourself grow as a creator?
Well, I do look forward to, and I believe it'll happen. If I continue to show up with my best spirit and heart, I do look forward to the next season of inspiration for me because I've experienced it before and I like who I am on it. I like the feeling of it. I mean, who doesn't like the feeling of inspiration? I'm wildly enthusiastic and just full of energy when I'm, which people, I'm sure most people can relate when they're inspired. Uh, I look forward to that because right now, for a number of aspects of my life, I'm doing what I need to do. And it's not to say there's no enjoyment, but some mornings are like tougher to get up than others just to do what you got to do, which I'm sure most people can relate to as well. So I think with that next season of inspiration, I'd like to see like a realization of a creative project that I have my heart involved in, whether it's my historical travel show or a line of greeting cards I've been tooling around with for 5, 6 years, um, or more gigs around town on drums. I want to cross a few things across. I want to put a few more things across the finish line that I've run into some roadblocks with, um, but I haven't given up on. So that's what I hope we'll see the culmination of with this next season of inspiration.
Yeah.
And I
Pros.
probably need to foster it by rereading the book.
Right. Um, yeah, that stone of motivation is hard to roll sometimes, especially if you're not being inspired to do it.
Yeah, I mean, people could debate on whether or not you have any control over inspiration, but the way that people have talked about it since the ancient Greeks is that it visits you. You know, the muse visits you.
Right.
Now, maybe if you're in like peak creative shape by doing creative exercises often, maybe the muse might visit you more often. But in the meantime, you just got to do what you got to do
Right.
um, to the most creative you can do it, um, and enjoy those seasons too, because it can't be all inspiration all the time for your whole life.
I
It
think
may
you
seem
go
that way.
you go crazy.
Yeah, I mean, some creative legends, it may look like that from the outset, but I'm sure if you read any biography on any great director or painter, they have these fallow periods where their fields just like recapture nutrients for the next crop, you know.
Right. But you had touched on it earlier. I read the Stephen King book on writing as well, and
Mm,
he talks about, if you want to be a writer, you go and write for, you know, 9 to 5 essentially. Like you just go, you have to write. You have to read, you have to write. If you're not doing that stuff constantly, yeah, forget it.
that's why he's so maddeningly prolific.
Right.
Absolutely astounding. but he took his natural talent and he honed it to one of the sharpest tools that writers ever had, and it's quality and quantity. It's wild.
Yeah. I mean, I've read a few Stephen King books and seen a couple movies, and I always and you know the name, but after reading that book, I'm just like, oh, he's done a lot. I didn't realize he was that big.
Yeah,
It's amazing, and a lot of it is just his discipline and digging in and just going for it,
yeah, man.
and just writing to write. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
and he doesn't show up with inspiration every day.
No.
Yeah, but he's there when it strikes.
Right. And like you were saying, you honed your creative muscles. I'm like he could write up with along as fast as his mind, I'm sure.
Right.
I cramp up if I have inspiration just trying to write. I'm like, oh, I need to write more.
He's well oiled. Yeah.
Yeah.